Alrighty then, welcome back to Universe X. Thank you guys for bearing with me first and foremost. I've kind of shortened the upload time from every day to every other day, just trying to make sure the content stays quality, and then I'm also juggling my Dokkan and Legends channel. Link will be in the description, stuff like that. One thing I did want to get out of the way, I have been going through all of the winners for my contest, and one more like giveaway. I have everybody's stuff here, but there's a couple people that I don't have names from yet. So real quick, I'm just gonna read you out. Claude, Menace, Unides, Unides, yes. Griffin Hunter TCG, Curtis Mohan, Jiswan Quinones, and Christian Lamas. I believe that's how you pronounce your name. You guys all, I've looked at my email, my Discord, in the comments, and I don't actually see any contact info with you guys. So I wanted to send it all out today, but because I don't have you guys, I'm giving you guys like 1-2 more days, and I'm gonna have to send out the first batch. I just want to make sure that everybody gets their stuff, and I know it's been over a week now, so I just wanted to make sure that people start getting their stuff back. Past then, gotta do the normal plugs. If you guys haven't been in the Facebook group already, try joining it because it is the largest forum of our card game. Facts is what it is. Also, always make sure to stop by the distributors pages like Maui GraphiX, who is actually going to go through a rebranding soon. He's going to come out with a really cool name. I'm waiting for him to drop it because I don't want to steal any thunder. But not only is the work quality, I'm going to have some cards to give away in the future soon enough. When I get them, I'm going to show them off on the channel because they are actual spice. So, past that, Tri-Finity Customs for mats, takes custom requests. They're really clean. I'm gonna show off mine soon enough. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. So, going into this, I wanted to start off with a little segment I haven't done in a bit. It's the Rogue series, and we've got not only a really good, well-known player, but we've got a really, really not well-known deck. And those are always good mixes. So I'm actually very, very excited to jump into the screen cap and show you guys what's going on. So without further ado, I'm gonna hop over there and we'll get cracking. I mean, this title already kind of spoils what the deck is, but I'm gonna pretend like it doesn't, I guess. All right. So, surprise, in case you haven't read the title, it's Frieza. And it's not any Frieza. It's not Mecha Frieza. It's not set 1 Frieza. It is set 12 Frieza, which you may have not have seen on camera at all, probably not, and you probably haven't even seen it at locals. Why? Because it's an incredibly interesting deck that most people, including myself, overlooked. But that being said, there's a lot to go off of here, and I have on the channel no other than Amani, a master deck builder, to sit here and explain why he has put these cards that I have so far called unplayable into a very playable deck, therefore making me look like a fool. But that's not the point. The point is, it's actually very interesting the way he explained it to me and sat down and talked to me about it. I was like, yo, this has to be on the channel. So first and foremost, gotta let you know, a lot of this deck will be kind of, in terms of explanation, shortcutted, because you can look at any of these cards and realize that reading throughout most of this deck is like more than an actual college course. What you do need to know is that most of these cards require you to have a yellow Frieza's Army leader, and a lot of stipulations. And since almost all of these cards talk about life, there's just walls, literally walls of text. So yeah, I don't feel like reading all this stuff, and therefore I'm going to pass this over immediately to Amani so that he can read all this stuff and paraphrase it in a way that you guys will absorb willingly. So, hey, Amani.
Thank you for that intro. Hi, everybody. We are here thank you for having me on the Rogue series. All right, so we're going to go over set 12 Frieza. First of all, a couple of intro notes I want to say here. This is a very fun deck for me to play. I really enjoy it. It's super cool. The concept is really wordy, but once you get the hang of it, it is really fun to do. It's extremely high skill cap. It does take a lot of practice to really kind of get the combos down. And for all of the practice you're going to put in, I do have to admit, largely it is not at the same level as some of the other decks that you may see, like Mecha, Red Broly, for example, are still decks that this one does not more often beat than lose to. So just something to keep in mind here. It's a very fun deck. A lot of the card choices are flexible, Minus the core, there are a lot of different options you can go. So we're just going to talk about a few of them here. Get into the core of the deck. This is an excellent deck to play if you want to play like a good local event, or you may actually slide into a top cut with an event with something like this. But it still does have its a share of a couple of inconsistencies. But overall, if you like it, try it. I mean, I think it'll be a lot of fun. If you are a Frieza fan, if you're a yellow player, mechanically, if you like skill intensive plays, I think it'll be a lot of fun. So to start off, we have to go straight in by telling you very quickly what the leader does. Now, we named this aptly like text Frieza. This is a lot of words. So I'm just gonna go through it very quickly and just hit the major points. So the leader starts off with 5k on the front side, so he's very small. He's in a cocoon, so he's very, very tiny. Whenever you take damage, instead of taking life, you flip them face up. That's including crits, that's including double strikes and triple strikes. You will flip the number of life up, equivalent to the amount of damage you would take, instead of taking the cards. You can't add cards from your life to your hand once they're face up. And cards in your life can only be flipped up by mono yellow card skills. So you can't use card skills like Turles' Tree of Might, for example, to flip Frieza's skills up. And the most important part is, once all of your life is face up, you lose the game. That is your lose condition. So it's still simply taking life, except you're not going to add those cards to your hand. And also, if you notice aptly, the very first thing that I noticed is this leader does not draw on the front side. So you're not doing a tremendous amount of card advantage with this card. With that being said, you go into its auto, and it starts off with the field spell in play, and that's where all the good interactions happen. So if we're gonna go down to the field spell real quick.
Yep.
The field spell is where all the good stuff happens. And so the field spell has barrier. It starts off in play, and basically it's like a Mecha Kabora. Whenever a card in your life is flipped face up once per turn, you can rest any of your opponent's cards. Any of them. They're battle cards, they're unisons, they're leader cards. So it starts in play, and it's a very effective way to both be able to defend yourself and be able to get your card advantage. The second effect says that you can crit one of your life, face down or face up, and then KO one of your battle cards. That's a Frieza's Army card, yellow Frieza's Army. You draw 2, and then you put either a Frieza's Army card or a unison, a yellow unison, into your life face up. So even if you're not being attacked, you can put life face up by critting face down life with the field spell. Most of the time, though, you're going to have life face up already, and you want them face up because that's how you're going to trigger their effects. The last part of the card text, which is very important, similar to Frieza's Awaken skill, if you have 3 or more cards face up in your life, you can put the field spell into the drop area and flip him. Flip the leader over like an Awakening, and then put the top card of your life, your deck, in the life face up. So neither his Awaken skill nor the field spell actually generate any advantage from flipping over. He flips over from 5 or less life. The field spell can flip over if you have 3 or more cards in your life. So it's not an ideal flip over. We're going to talk about some of the times where it's important to flip over earlier than later. Obviously, once you sacrifice the field card, you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way to get your card advantage, but it's not as hard as it seems. Backside of the leader says all the same thing, except the very important, very last card effect on it, which is activate battle once per turn. You crit a life, any life, you draw a card, he gains 5,000 power and double strike for the battle. That's either player's turn, and that's very, very important because that's where your aggro, is your finishing pressure, and your defense is going to come from, all in one card effect. You're going to draw cards whenever you crit life, which, by the way, will trigger any card effect from the life, and then you're going to gain 5,000 more power, so you're going to be base 20, and then you're going to gain double strike, which means if you're attacking, you're going to attack for double strike. Okay, so that's very important for being able to close games here. You're going to notice very quickly in here, you're not going to have too many cards that are going to deal significant amounts of damage. So you do want to make sure that you're able to get the impactful damages dealt, like your Frieza's Leader effect, and then some of the other cards in here we're going to get into. Okay, so leader skills down, field spell is down. Next thing to go into is the core. So we play 4 of the Ginyu Unison. The Ginyu Unison is the one that if you crit it from your life while it's face up, you can summon it for free with a marker on it if you don't already have one in play. This is probably as free as the Jax Milling SS Gotenks from its top 5. This is about as free can get. This unison can be played as many times per turn as you can, as long as you don't already have it in play. So if you play it and you activate it, and if you notice it has a rejuvenate for 4, the cheapest rejuvenate available. So if you can do all of its effects in one turn and then summon it over again. It is 15k, so it attacks very well. And it's +1, takes any face-up card out of your life, puts it under it, and then puts a mono yellow card back into your life and then draws you a card. So this deck is all about cycling. There's not a lot of plus in here. You're gonna notice that very quickly. The unison takes on that same type of gameplay style where it's gonna cycle cards. Take one from your life, put one back, draw a new card. So the goal here is to continue to cycle around those face-up lives, to continue to set up cards that can actually come out of your life and have meaningful effects while replacing them so you're not losing life total. Going into the next part of the core, we have 3 of the Sorbet and 4 of the Tagoma. So these are your 1-drops here that you want to generally look for in the start. Also with 4 Frieza's calls to maximize consistency. Sorbet is the one that I play at 3, because Sorbet is the one that once you have it, you generally don't need another one. And that's because Sorbet has a unique effect. So obviously when it comes into play, you can search top 5 for Frieza's Army card or for a unison with a cost of 2, add it to your hand. The Frieza's Army card, obviously 3 or less. So you can search for any Frieza's Army card in here except the super rare because it's a 5-drop. And then when it's in your discard pile, you can pay a yellow and summon it from your discard pile with its skills negated as long as the field spell is still in play. And this is how you create the +1 from the field spell so that you're not summoning a card out of your hand every single turn and then breaking even by killing it with the field spell. You can loop the Sorbet from your discard pile and then continuously pop it to draw 2 and put 1 in your life. So that's how you create that +1 that you lose from your leader not being able to swing. That makes this card extremely important, but not necessarily something you need to see 4 times in a game. Once it hits grave, albeit a couple of circumstances, like maybe a Demon Realm Ravager from Dark Broly or something like that, may take it out of the graveyard, but outside of that, it's generally okay to see it once, and it's usually just gonna stay in the grave until you're done using it. So that's the 3 of. Tagoma is the 4 of. Tagoma draws a card when it comes into play, and Tagoma's effect is a little bit more usable multiple times. This one says that if you have 2 or more energy, you can crit one of your face-up life and then warp this card from your drop area. You replace the face-up life with a mono yellow Frieza's Army or unison. That's pretty much going to be the requirement for all of these cards. And then you draw a card. That can be activated once per turn. So Tagoma is also a cycle. He's also a trigger to activate your face-up life skills from the discard pile. And he is one of the ones that can be critted. He can be freely put into the life area. He can even go under the Ginyu unison. He's one of the easier ones to be flexible about. Whereas you're going to find that some of these other ones are strictly better going to life and then coming out of life. This one is probably easier to be used a little bit differently. This one combos well. You can summon him and crit him for the field spell. You can put him under the unison and sack him for rejuvenate or something like that. So he's more versatile, and he's an easy 4 of. He replaces himself however he's summoned, hard casted, or Frieza's called, and then he works on the board, sacks him, and then does double time in the graveyard.
Sweet.
Okay, yeah. So with those being your core cards, then we'll go into the summon cards, which are the 2-drop and the 3-drop Frieza. These are the other cards that summon from the energy, from the life when you crit them, and these particular ones are also for us for that reason. And these are some of the more important cards to the deck because these are ones that have the most immediate impact to the game state. The 2-drop, for example, is a blocker. It's the small one. It's a blocker. You summon it for 1 yellow when it's critted from your life, and if it's your turn when you play it, you pop one of your opponent's 4 drops or lowers in rest mode. So this is basically your go-to removal in the early mid game, and it's also a blocker, so it's very good defensively, and it's very good at mitigating threats. Super duper important and an obvious 4 of. This one can also be summoned by Frieza's Call out of the deck. Obviously, it will go in rest mode, but if you need a spot removal, you can create a spot removal from out of your deck, or face up out of your life. If you draw it, it's very easy to get into your life using skills like your field spell, or like Tagoma, or like your Ginyu Unison, and you just crit it from there, put it on board. It's a blocker, so it's active mode, and it pops a card. That's an easy way to stifle your opponent's early game aggression. Most cards in that game state, that 2 energy game state, are gonna be applicable to this card, 4 drop or lower. It will probably always be able to find a target outside of unique decks, like once again, like Dark Broly, for example. You probably won't find a target in that matchup, but it's still effective as a blocker. It at least forces them to remove it. And so that's cool for just 1 energy. Then you have the 3-drop Frieza, which in my opinion is the best part of the engine. The 3-drop Frieza does a lot more work than most of the other cards. So this one also summons when you crit it by paying 1 yellow. It is a 19k double strike. So this is one of the very first cards that the battle cards you're gonna be able to get aggressive with. Most of the time you'll find that you can only really attack with your Unison till this card hits board. This one says that whenever your opponent plays a battle card, you can crit a life and choose that battle card, switch it to rest mode, and then draw a card. If you do that, you negate this skill. So this is unlike mandatory, as I'll air quote, skills like routine, for example, that have to trigger on the very first summon. This card will continue to trigger every time your opponent plays a battle card until you choose to resolve it. And then once you choose to resolve it, it negates its skill for the turn. So it doesn't matter which battle cards your opponent plays or what order he plays them in. You can always get to the cards you need as long as this card remains on board. And so that's really cool. It's also not a counter skill. And even though it doesn't ignore barrier, that does mean that it does ignore deflect. So it can get good big cards like Xenocell even falls into this card and gets put into rest mode. So it's very powerful on the defense, and it's a 19k double striker, so it's very powerful on offense. It attacks under most of your floodgates, like Violent Rays, for example. It attacks well under Unison and Fury. It attacks well under most floodgates, and it's not particularly small. It takes all the work of a 20k to deal with it, but it attacks under everything that would floodgate a normal 20k. So it's very cool.
I mean, that's pretty hot. Like 19Ks are really, really hot.
Yes, especially 19Ks that are powerful. Obviously, the math is going to get a little weird when you go to combo phase. Like if you combo to 29, they still have to combo to 30. If they attack you, they still got to combo to 30. Like if they're at 30 and you're at 29, it's the same thing as you being at 30. So it's really, really cool because it still hits like a 20K until you get to the point where you have to floodgate it, and then it avoids most floodgates because it's under 20k.
I dig it. What's next on the agenda?
The last part of the early game engine in the Frieza's Army Corps is that Ginyu, the one last body change. It's also a 4-of. This one is a very simple card. This one crits a face-up life, and you draw 2 cards. It stays on board, and then whenever one of your opponent's cards gets switched to rest mode, any card, this card will gain blocker for the turn. So it's also small, just like Tagoma. It's still Frieza's Army, but this one is a little bit different. This one will not replace the life that it crits. Just like the 3-drop Frieza, when it crits a life to use its effect, this one will not replace that card. And so with that, you will actually lose face-up cards out of your life area. Most of the time, that's not a big deal, because once they're face-up, they're dead life. But keep in mind that you don't replace cards here. So when you crit a card and you draw 2, both of those cards go into your hand. So that's one of your very few +1s. This one is also summonable by Frieza's Call, but just like the 2-drop Frieza, it does have the potential to be a blocker. So summoning it in rest mode, if you have to summon it, do so. But this one actually only costs 1 to hardcast. So this is one where you would like to draw it more often than burn your Frieza's Call. And this one's an obvious 4. Like I said, it's one of the only +1s in the deck. And though you do cycle through a tremendous number of cards, you don't hard draw a lot in the early game without cards like these. Okay?
Dig.
Okay, so we're going to go into a couple of the other obvious small text before we get into the late game. So you have 3 of the Poutine. Poutine is an extremely powerful card in this format. It's a unique barrier card. Whenever you switch an opponent's card to rest mode, you can summon it, and then once it's on board, once per turn, whenever your opponent uses a skill to play a battle card or activates a counter skill, you can rest one of their battle cards. That's on either player's turn. That's the very first time. It is a once per turn. So no matter what you choose, it will trigger on the very first activation. So if your opponent summons a card using a skill or activates a counter skill, it triggers no matter what. If you don't have any targets, that's how you play around Poutine. But it's an excellent card because just the presence of it makes your opponent have to play differently. And that's a very, very powerful card. And it's totally, totally free. And having barrier makes it an extremely difficult card to deal with. It doesn't attack because it's super small. So you just have to have things that pop active mode barrier cards. And there aren't very many. So it generally sticks around. The reason you play 3 is because, unfortunately, one of the major weaknesses to this deck is that if a card gets put in your life, it's stuck. You can't add it to your hand in any conventional manner. And there are no unconventional manners in this deck. You just have it stuck in your life. So you have to play cards like this in reasonable numbers because these cards are particularly effective for your deck's survival. So if you don't see Poutine early, your deck will function very different. And so when you put Poutine in life and you're only playing one of them, well, that's a game you're never going to be able to play Poutine, and your opponent knows that. If they see Poutine in life, that's one Poutine that they will never see hit the board. So that's something that is very important when you're choosing the ratios for this deck. The yellow cards and the Frieza cards are obviously a little bit more manageable because all the Frieza cards can be crit from life and activated, but cards like this Poutine are strictly just dead in the life. So you got to be careful with the number that you're playing. So I chose to play 3. I think that's a pretty good number. I don't ever want to play 4 of a black card that doesn't do anything but summon itself one time. So that's also important.
Dig it.
Outside of that, obviously you have 3 of the Prideful Transformation Vegeta. If you notice, we're playing 4 free, completely free unisons and 2 extremely difficult unisons to remove. Mecha Kabura, we'll get to him. So Vegeta is pretty much live and simple, very easy to play. The only other counterplay in the deck is called Bloodlust, which is the 1-0. So in most cases, the ability to not be able to play other counterplays for the turn isn't going to hurt you too much. Vegeta comes into play as a Crusher Ball to whatever battle card comes into play. It does go around deflect. So whatever's coming into play comes into play in rest mode, and then he summons himself as a 14k blocker. So that means that you stopped one card and then put a card in play that can potentially stop another card. And that's what this deck's all about. You have to be able to survive into the late game because, as you should have noticed by now, not very many of these cards are powerful attackers. So you have to get to your late game to make meaningful impact. And that very well may be a key weakness in the deck, but that's how it was designed. So you have to roll with that. Vegeta is very important in that part, and he is free. So what's the harm in free? Free unison, free counterplay. All right. And so back up here to our 5th and 6th copy of Unison. This is 2 Mecha Kaburas. As a mono yellow Unison, he is a target for all of your other card skills when you have to replace a card that you've crit from life. If you notice, they all say place a mono yellow Frieza's Army card or a mono yellow Unison card. So if you have an extra Mecha Kabura lying around, you can put that in your life instead of a card that may have more impact in the game at that time. So with that being said, we all know Mecha Kabura is probably the strongest unison to have come out at his time. He is a 4-cost, so he is not designed to be played very early because once he hits the board, he is very, very difficult to deal with. Compounded with this cutting edge recovery device field spell, this becomes an extremely difficult combo to attack through, since Meki and cutting edge both have the same effect. Essentially, whenever you hit one of them, whenever you trigger one of their conditions, they can rest any one of your cards. So Meki, whenever he loses markers from an attack, he rests one of your opponent's cards, and he's a blocker, so he will trigger most of the time. Cutting edge recovery device, as you recall, rests a card when a life is flipped face up. So a successful leader attack will get a card rested, a block from Meki will get another card rested. And then Meki's effect is +1, is a hard +1, draw a card, and then he keeps a card in rest mode, knowing barrier in rest mode, probably for a very long time, if not forever. So that's super, super strong. Meki can stop 3 attacks just by himself, blocking 1, locking 1 from being able to untap, and then actually resting another card. That's super strong. And that's one of the safest plays I feel, even though this deck is energy intense and a tap 4 seems very difficult to produce. This is a very worthy tap 4, and it's probably one of the safest tap 4s you're going to get. Oh, and then of course he has his -4 where he can steal one of your opponent's battle cards. But you don't do that as often as you would think, unless it's something juicy like Xenocell. Steal him. But outside of that, you know, most of the time you're just going to keep cards locked in rest mode. And even if it's something like Xenocell, you'll find that just leaving it in rest mode forever is probably just as effective. Okay. So let's jump into the let's knock out some of the extra cards here and the super combos, and then we're going to go into the late game and close it out with the side. So 3 Final Flash and 2 Flying Nimbus, 1 Cold Bloodlust for your extra card package. As far as not using Frieza's Call and the field spell are obvious. Final Flash is a 15k power up to a leader or to a battle card. This is important when attacking and defending because your leader is base 5 when he's being attacked, and when he awakens, he's base 20 double strike when attacking and being attacked. So that 15k power for 1 energy is a huge power swing. Between Frieza's actual leader effect and the Final Flash itself, you have drawn a card and then put Final Flash out, so you haven't lost any cards in hand, and you have turned your leader into a 35k double strike. You haven't lost any cards in hand. So that's a tremendous advantage. And on top of that, it negates an opponent's skills on one of their battle cards, ignoring barrier. This is the prime time option to go through cards that are otherwise problem cards in your against you, both on offense and on defense. So this is a very important card. It is a 3-up. It's hard to play it at 4 because the deck is so energy intensive, but in some cases I do feel like a 4 of it would not be a bad option. But I opted to play Nimbus for obvious reasons, so I can only play 3 of this card. It's really tight. This list is already at 52 cards, minus the field spell, which is free. It's at 51 cards. So I settled for 3 Final Flash and 2 Nimbus. Nimbus is a very effective card in stopping aggro. You just negate an attack, discard a card, a yellow card, and then your opponent can only attack 1 more time with battle. It's not as powerful as it used to be, but in a deck like this, it's very, very, very powerful. Very powerful. This is one of the few decks that can actually touch unisons with its rest effects. So when you do something like a Nimbus, the next swing could very well lock out the rest of your opponent's swings for turn. So that's super duper cool. And then when you Nimbus with something like Meki or something like this field spell in play, you can totally lock your opponent down for a turn. So I thought that you couldn't really build without it. Then of course, on top of that, you add in your 4 super combos Zamasus, which rest a leader or battle card when they're comboed with, and you get the full lock. It's very difficult to kill this deck. Cool. Last thing in the main deck are the end games. So you have this big boy, the 3 Frieza Divine Transformations. That is the super rare. That's the cards you want to play. That's the big man, the boss card in the deck. So right off the top, you see that it is a deflect. So it is a safe tap 5, however safe it can be anyway. Double strike and blocker. That means it's probably going to do something on offense and defense. Its permanent says it can't be removed by your opponent's skills, so it is totally safe. I mean, the only thing you probably don't want to do is play it into a Zamasu super combo. It is totally safe. When it's played, it KOs all of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode. It doesn't ignore barrier. You can't have everything. And then it is the only card in the deck that flips a face-up life face down, and that equates to gaining a life, which is why it's the only one that does it. You can't flip face down cards all willy-nilly with a leader that loses when all its life is face up. Flipping a card face down is gaining a life. And then at the end of the turn, it switches itself to active mode, and it is a blocker. So that's huge. It does a lot for its 5 energy. Probably could do a little bit more considering, but there's no way to cheat it out. It's a solid 25, it's 5 energy. It's about as fair as an unfair fair card can be.
That sentence hurt my head.
Second auto says that when your opponent uses a counterattack skill, not just on him, but when he uses any counterattack skill, you choose 2 of their cards, switch them to rest mode, and they can't be switched back to active mode until the end of the next turn. This can target cards that are already in rest mode. That means that you can lock 2 energy, you can lock a leader and a unison, you can lock a leader and any combination of 2 cards that are in play can be locked in rest mode. This is huge. This is another one of those cards that can actually touch unison cards for good, can touch leader cards for good. I mean, like, you'll lock them down and they do not come back the next turn. That's humongous. You can lock energy down. That's a very big deal. And that really, really talks your opponent out of wanting to use counterattacks while this card's in play. But how long can you deal with the fact that he's a double strike and you have a double strike leader? You probably have another double striker in play because you can make 3 drops with 1 energy. Like, come on now. You're going to run out of stuff that you can do, and counterattacks are just going to start flooding your hand. You're going to be forced to lock your board down, and you won't be able to kill me on the crackback because you're 2 attacks out now, and I have a blocker.
Why are we punishing people for trying to avoid getting swung on?
Oh, well, that's the name of the game. If I get the late game, it can be very punishing. These stack very, very well. Each Frieza will trigger on every counterattack skill. So if I have 2 in play, that's 4 cards that are going to get locked down. Both of them will. It gets uncomfortable. It's well worth making it to turn 5 and looking left, looking right, tapping 5 and dropping this card, and knowing that you're probably safe, and then stacking them. Yes, stacking them.
2 on the board sounds like an absolute nightmare, actually.
It is. Now, like I said, it's the most unfair fair card. This card's totally balanced in its regard. A 5 energy and it can't be cheated out. But it feels about borderline unfair. All right. So we move on to the last 3 black cards. And so the Overwhelm 6-drop man on a mission. This is just a critical double strike. It doesn't do anything else. It's 20k. So when you get into that pivot space, when it's time for you to finally close the game, you have your leaders double strike. You have your 5 drops double strike if it's in play. You have the 3 drops double strikes if you have access to those. And then you have this free 6-drop critical double strike. So you have a space where you can apply some pressure. This card is really huge in the early and mid game on decks that are looking to try to close games early against you, and they overexhaust themselves into a counterattack. This is where you go for that counterattack. If you find a deck like Red Broly, for example, and I pretty much often use Red Broly for this example because it does this very well, that tries to really, really, really aggro you, punish you hard, but you know that that deck plays constantly from 4 life. This is a space where perhaps you can set up an easy counterattack. If you drop a train that lasts Frieza on board, critting your life or something, you get your unison swing, then you get your 19k double strike, and then right when you near burn them out, you slam this critical double strike on board, and then you kill them with your leader swing. You can produce a very strong crackback earlier in the game if you need to, and this card is just like icing on that cake. It's obviously one of the most notable flex spots, and when you see in the sideboard I have Secret Identity in there, that is an easy one you can main deck instead of this. If you would prefer to have a little bit more wide removal, you're not strong on removal, so there are many flex spots you can put here. I put Man on a Mission because I felt like this deck has several defensive options. It needs something that can punch.
Now, for you viewers just watching, I deduced after talking to Amani for a long time that this is Amani's favorite unison in the game. Sorry, favorite black Overwhelm card in the game by far. And if you ever see him at a tournament, when they start up again, you should bring your Man on a Missions to him to sign because he loves that card this much. I'm pretty sure that's what you told me.
No, I hate this card. I hate this card.
He's just tired. Definitely bring yours for signatures.
Oh my god. All right, on to the next one. The secret rare of choice for this deck, and this is probably the biggest flex spot in here. I chose to go with Supreme Kai. I have played several different secret rares in here. Obviously, anybody that knows me knows that my strategy in all games in DBS is to draw as many cards as I can and then slap Zeno Cell on board. That's always been my strategy.
It's 100% true.
In a deck that I know I can make Zeno Cell numbers, when I choose Kai, that has to prove testament to its power. We really, really have to look closely at this card while we still have the opportunity before this card gets out of control. This is a very, very, very powerful secret rare for defense and a very powerful secret rare for counterattacking. So basically, it has the baby hatch clause. If it's removed, it's gone. If it leaves the battle area, it's gone. But that's fine. It doesn't matter. It has an activate main and activate battle. An activate battle will go over first, cost 1. If you have 3 more energy, you summon it from your hand. If you do, your opponent can't attack with leaders or unisons. So, looking back into these cards that we have here, if I cut your leader and unison off, how many attacks can you realistically rely on having?
All right.
Just stew in that for a second. If I cut your leader and your unison off, how many attacks can you realistically expect to have? Take that knowledge and compound that with the fact that if you attack with a battle card first, you are avoiding Nimbus. But if you attack with a leader card first, you're walking into Nimbus. So what do you do? If you attack with a battle card first and I slam this card on board, it's basically a reverse Nimbus. It locks your leader and unisons out of attacking. It's like a reverse Nimbus. And then once this Kai slams on board, I can either take the life, flip my life face up, and then my field spell can rest probably the rest of your battle cards, or I can out combo you and maybe combo Zamasu super combo, rest the rest of your battle cards. More than likely, when I summon this Kai, it's going to end your turn, or end your attack phase anyway. And then it goes to its activate main, where for 1 energy, it pops itself and warps all of your opponent's battle cards and unison cards. It doesn't ignore barrier, and it's a secret rare, so I have questions about that. But I guess it'd be a little unfair. But it's a 40k body. You don't have to waste that body. If you feel realistically like it can go sideways and nothing will happen to it, swing with it. It's a 40k. And then pop it and kill all your opponent's cards. And that sets them back to square one. Against a deck like this, if I can get a board wipe on battle and unison cards, you are really back at square one. I mean, it's already hard enough to kill this deck, but once you flood that board and you get punished by this Kai, you probably will not be able to restabilize.
Now, despite what Amani's saying, I'm not sure if this card should be hoarded as much as possible. At least not until I bought my copy. In which case, then I believe everybody should understand this card is snapped. But until then, if you'd like to hook a dude up, I am accepting pretty much all offers. I definitely need this card. Never pulled it. So sad. But I think it's being overrated until I have my own copy. What else? Where else are we going with this?
It's waifu material. Look at that picture. Waifu. All right, on to the last card in the deck is the Shroud of the Mystery Fu. This is a 1-of, and for a period of time, I go back and forth between 1 and 2 of this card for the same reason that we explained. If this card gets to life, this card's pretty much not going to ever see the light of day. And when you start stacking Friezas and your opponent can't kill you, and then you start attacking with them, eventually you kind of want to pick up the pace. And once you've stacked a couple Divine Transformations on board, you slam this Fu on board, that's probably going to be game. It's still expensive. It's Auto Realm 10, costs 6. But when it slams the board, your opponent can only use leader skills all the way through into your next turn. So it's a pretty effective lockdown. And so when you have things like your leader being double strike, Frieza's being double strike, you can produce a Fu on an open game and probably end the game. Even if it's just your leader, if you have the energy for a Fu, you may be able to just end the game on a leader's double strike and a Fu's double strike, just because your opponent is locked out of resources. Like, unless they're playing O10 super combos, they have no super combos, they have no negates, they have no extra cards, they only have hard combo power. So this is very good here. Very good here. This is one of the few decks that is going to consistently go to turn 6, whether your opponent likes it or not. This is one of the few decks where Fu can always be live if you see it. Whether or not it's the best play, obviously, is the judgment of the player in the game state, but this one will almost always be live. You can produce 10 cards in your graveyard as quickly as you need to. The only other overwhelm is Man on a Mission. You can play both of them in a game very easily. You can produce 16 cards in your grave. Half of the card skills in your deck kill cards. It's very simple.
Now I'm noticing when it comes to ratios, Fu Shroud of the Mystery is at 1 because of how late in the game you can play it and the fact that you're probably not going to be able to play it a second time. Supreme Kai of Time is at 1 because it has the keyword ultimate. Now if you notice a funny thing, Man on a Mission is also at 1. Doesn't have the keyword ultimate, but it's likely because, as Amani has told me many times, Man on a Mission is at ultimate levels of efficiency. This card is broken. You only need 1 to close out a game, which is why it's at 1, just like Supreme Kai of Time. Space-Time Unraveling.
Yeah, this card is like a free Champa. I mean, a free Champa if Champa gave critical. and double strike. It's like a free chomper. I mean, think about it. A leader swing, most of the time at that game state, awakened leaders are 15k. So if I slam a 20k critical double strike on you, you're already 10k under me to combo out. So for me to have played it for free, it's like adding 5k combo power and double strike and critical to a swing. I mean, it's 20k, it's critical, it's double strike. So it's 5 more k than my leader. So it's like combo and 5, giving my leader critical and double strike. Except obviously it's another body. So stuff like Final Flash will work on it. I guess that's cool, but it's free. It's totally free. Like there's no loss to it whatsoever. If it gets countered, oh no. If it gets counterplayed, oh dear. If it doesn't go through, hey, it's 2 cards out of your opponent's hand or a super combo, depending on whether or not you don't even choose the combo from it. 1 card out of your hand can make a very huge difference. And if you're very calculating with your game state, you can play this in spaces where your opponent is probably not going to be able to deal with it. And then it goes through. And then it's critical. They don't gain anything from it. So if they couldn't deal with this, they probably can't deal with your next double strike.
Sounds broken to me.
That's efficiency. That's efficiency. And efficiency is the name of the game. This is basically a value town deck. I mean, it doesn't really do much of anything. And a lot of these cards, if I'm not holding back here, a lot of these cards aren't very good. But in combination, it's a very fun deck, and these cards can do a lot. They have a lot of text on them.
So that being said, you want to talk about the sideboard real quick before we wrap it up?
Gonna run through it real quick. It's a very straightforward sideboard. There's a couple options in here that you may not see, but for the most part, standard Frieza side list. 4 units in a Fury. This just keeps the big decks out of your face. If you really do want to try to tackle the big 3 here, you're gonna want a card like Units in a Fury on your side. Obviously, you're gonna side out the Mecha Kaboras almost immediately, and half of your Genyus. They're still free. Don't side all of them out. They are still free. But you're going to put in those 4 units in a Furies so that you can tackle decks that are just unfair. Because you're fair. You can say you're not, but you're totally fair. And decks like Red Broly and Dark Broly and Mecha, and those are the unfair ones. You need cards like these to beat unfair decks. You play the 1 Restrain because the Restrain is just an addition to negate, but as you notice, the Restrain can be played for discard pile, and this is a deck that really does flood the discard pile. So if Restrain gets caught in your life, or if you want to put Restrain in your life, put it under Ginyu or something like that, filter through it, Restrain will still be usable once it hits the drop area. This is an effective way to have an additional negate sitting in your discard pile, and if you just need an extra negate and you can't count on something like drawing a negate, you can count on critting it from your life. So I saw just one of it. I mean, it's not incredibly impressive as a negate. It's literally just a blank negate. So there you go. To 2 death balls, you are a Frieza leader, so during your turn, you can give your Frieza leader 15 extra K and KO a battle card. This is necessary for matchups where you have to flip over early. And I did say that I would go into that, so I'm going to run that real quick. Cutting Edge Recovery Device lets you flip over the moment you have 3 life face up. Frieza's leader, the actual leader, lets you flip over whenever your life is at 5 or less. One of those situations is far less common than the other one, but no matter what you do when you flip over, you have to kill the field spell. But look at what you gain when you flip over. It's a very good card on the backside. There are just certain decks in this format you can't wait too long to flip. You're not going to survive at a base 5k that can't attack, can't draw cards, can't generate power. You're not going to survive like that. So you have to get those field spell procs as early as possible because you're going to get into a game state where you can't afford to stay on the front side. Then you need a couple extra cards. You're going to have to use your leader effect to crit your life and draw cards on every turn so that you can rebuild that card advantage. Once you do that, once you're on the backside, cards like Death Ball become super, super, super strong for counterattacking purposes. You attack with your leader, you draw a card, you gain 5,000 power double strike, then you spend 1 more energy to put in 35k, just like Final Flash, and you KO a breasted battle card. You can take 2 battle cards down with that power level. You can easily put a double strike through on your opponent and kill a battle card of threat. This is a very big card, and this card works on any battle card that has no restriction. So it's good in any matchup where you need a solid counter-attacking removal, cheap removal. Only Frieza can use it, take advantage of it. One of the few decks that can use it.
Dig it.
2 Ox King. This is a very interesting card here. This is one that I only side deck against in decks that have heavy removal. Decks that are obviously one of the main things that you can side deck against this deck that will completely destroy this deck. I mean, really set it on its back foot is Mass Saiyan, Secret Identity. If you're not siding it, I don't know what format you've been playing in, man. Secret Identity can put this deck very, 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 very far behind. So, I mean, like you can wipe 3-drop Frieza, Sorbet, Tagoma, Ginyu, all at the same time. It can put you very, very far behind. So even things like spot removals, like Uncontrollable Berserker and Dark Blue, or like Piccolo Jr.'s -5, can clear blockers out of your way. You can clear 3-drop freezes. If you can stick those cards to board, your survivability almost doubles. Even if you have to sacrifice the Ox King to do it, most people are not going to produce multiple wide removals. Like if you go Mad Saiyan, for example, and you warp Ox King and don't warp anything else, I'm probably fine with that. Let's be honest.
Are there ever any games where you just like are able to see both Ox King just playing for 2 energy and just try to sit on it? Or?
Absolutely. Because of the way you go through cards so quickly, as long as Ox King doesn't hit your life, I have mulliganed the game and drawn it in my opening hand, and by turn 2, I've had both. And so I go to my turn. Generally, you want to go to your turn 3. Don't just slap them down on turn 2, because that's a waste of your turn 2. You're going to tap out to play 2 Ox Kings. They're not going to afford you any combo power, and you're just going to get run over because your opponent can see them, and they're like, okay, well, I can't remove stuff. Let me just kill him instead. Don't do it on turn 2, especially if you go second. But like when you get to turn 3, it becomes much better. You can slap double Ox King down, and by that turn, by 3 turns in the game, maybe you already are prepared for setup. Maybe you've got blocker Ginyu down. Maybe you are capable of critting 3-drop Frieza from your life. Maybe you can do that, summon the Frieza, have routine next to it, have a Zamasu super combo hand. You should be pretty safe. If you double Ox King, everything 3-drop or lower has barrier except routine, which has barrier. So, that's effective. I can't stress it to you enough. If you can stick 1-drop Ginyu, 2-drop Frieza to board, 3-drop Frieza to board, counterplay Vegeta, if you don't have to worry about those cards being removed, hard removed, if they actually get the full power of their block, your survivability will go up significantly. Not so much that you should be maining Ox Kings. They're not the easiest things to play, and in certain matchups, they're absolutely dead. But if you have a matchup where you are concerned about your game state at all times, side them in. Mostly Dark Broly. Side them in. Striving Vegeta pops barrier cards in rest mode and then untaps energy. It's a simple card, straightforward. It's mostly for Slug. Slug will shut the deck down immediately, and that makes it pretty much unplayable against Mecha. Mecha's already your hardest matchup because of its ability to rest all of your important cards. But now that you have Slug package available to Mecha, so you side this Vegeta here because that's going to get you out of the way very quickly. And hope that they don't have Bloodlust and Tyrannical, or those things that Mecha does. Just kind of hope. Do your best. You can't afford but so much options at one time. You're doing the best you can. You're playing basically a tier 2.5, maybe tier 3 deck. You're doing the best you can. So
savagery.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's not Mecha. It is not stronger than Mecha, but it has the tools where in the right scenario, if the player is paying attention, they can beat Mecha. And Vegeta is going to be one of those cards you're going to need to deal with Slug. If you don't deal with Slug, Ginyu's off, Tagoma's off, the 1-drop Ginyu is off, Sorbet is off, the 3-drop Frieza is off. Like, what? That's half your deck. The field spell is off. How are you? The Mechi's off. How are you going to draw cards? So, yeah, have options. One Cooler, for the same reason as I explained with the Man on a Mission. Cooler is the absolute GOAT for the tag team here. When you go into that turn and you're on like turn 3 or your back foot and you're like, all right, how do I kill this man without spending any energy to do so? When you flip your leader over and you be like, all right, he's at 2 life, go Man on a Mission, critical double strike, swing with leader, and they're like negate, and you slap Cooler down and you tap those only 3 energy, you draw your 2 cards, you gain your 5k double strike, and you all that. Clean. Cooler is very effective in this deck because most of the time when you're looking to apply pressure, lethal pressure, you're not spending all your energy in the mid game. It is best in the mid game. It is not ideal in the late game because your late game cards are expensive. If you drop Fu, you don't need Cooler. If you drop 5-drop Frieza, you probably can't play Cooler. I don't know where you're getting 8 energy from. In the mid game is ideal. When you have Trained at Last Frieza, who costs 1, you summon him on turn 4, you need 19k double strike, your lead is 20k double strike, your Man on the Mission is 20k double. That's where you Cooler. Effective. Remember, efficiency is the name of the game. 1 Cooler. 2 Mad Saiyan Secret Identity. If you side it in, Man on the Mission has to come out. It is what it is. Food probably should come out. This is the side deck option. When you know you have a game, you're not going to 6. You're not playing 10-drop Food. Red Broly, for example. Ain't no sense in putting 10-drop Food in your deck. Side it out for Mad Saiyan. You want removal. Wide removal. Strong removal. And Mad Saiyan combined with 2-drop Frieza, potentially the Death Ball side in, which you should probably also side in. These units aren't going to do you any good in that matchup. Should be able to give you the space to deal with decks like that. Because those decks are so powerful, but if you can slap 3 removals down in those same 2 energy, you might have a chance to clear it out. You know, slap 3 removals down, one of them is blocker, and one of them is a wide removal, 25k attacker, one of them is 15k combo power. You might have a chance if you have options like those. But don't main deck them. They're dead in some matchups. You can main Secret Identity, that's one of the flex spots. You can main that instead of Mana Remission if you just want safe wide removal, but always have it somewhere. It's super important in this format. And the one Dark Banisher, because, like I said again, you are going to very quickly notice that every game may go to 6, but Stride of the Mystery may not be the tap move. That tap 6 for him is probably not going to be the move. Dark Banisher offers you a much better option to tap 4 instead of 6, and even in matchups like Dark Broly, most specifically, when you have a window that's earlier than turn 6, if you can slam Dark Banisher down and kill them, do it. Don't hold back. You have a double strike leader, inherent double strike leader. I can't stress that enough. That's super, super huge. Kill them if you can. Don't waste time.
Hey.
And there you go.
So, another beefy video full of content, full of information. So I hope you guys actually liked it. I'm just going to take off the cursor so you can see everything as it is. Like Amani said, this deck will take some time to get used to. You won't just pick it up and just destroy with it, or pick it up and have like easy games with it. And if you do, please contact me. Like, I may need to learn a thing or two for you, or maybe you just have like an innate skill that nobody in the likes of this game has ever seen before. But this generally is one of those quirky decks that relies on its interactions within its own archetype to like excel. And it's very, very, very peculiar. So yeah, you're gonna need to practice, get a solitaire, play against your friends a little bit. But I just wanted to put this on the channel because a lot of people read off this deck, including me. And I think it's just really cool when you find how the deck actually works out and where it has space to work, and you know, see it for the beauty it is. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Amani, for getting on the channel again.
Sure, thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. And I will see you guys the next time you decide to join UniXRogue. If you like the content, think about hitting that subscribe button, that notification button, and I will see you next time. Later.